all of these kids that we enlist in the military, a lot of them, they come from backgrounds like I came from. They are maybe running to something and running away from something at the same time. And so what happens when you get out and you're running away and to at the same time, you have this sort of subconscious conscious collision of like not really understanding why you do what you do. And so if you think about these kids who have spent their whole life serving other people and now they're getting out, and in order for them to be successful in a new system, this new, civilian system, you got to find health for yourself. You're not in that posture of serving everybody. You need to take care of your family and take care of yourself. And the more you love yourself, the more you can love other people and help other people. And I couldn't architect this here. It's all happened, out of a desire here. And so we talk about sidekicks and how important mentorship and sidekicks are. And I view my job now to be in this position to help other people find the same path to success in every way, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, through the work that we do here.
Trying to reach my goals, got no time for mistakes. Yeah, I'm standing on business, need a big safe. Suited up, got the blueprint in the briefcase. It's go time on the grind, these are big stakes.
Broadcasting from the Franchise Sidekick studio, welcome to the Sidekick Life. Get ready for stories of passion, problem solvings, and success from those living life on their terms. Hey, welcome back, Sidekicks. You are here with us on the Sidekick Life, and we are with an old friend of mine, somebody that I have always admired and appreciated, and I could just continue to say really nice things about him, but I would rather hear from him. Matt Hesse, founder, CEO of UHP, and many other things. So Matt, welcome. Thanks for being here with us.
Hey, thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
If you don't mind, tell our audience a little bit about your background, your bio, and then we'll get into asking you some questions.
Yeah, awesome. So grew up in Nebraska, as you know, Ryan, and spent all my youth in sports and rode bulls for a while, wrestled, and then found myself enlisting in the military when I was 17. I did about 6 years in the Army, and then went to school at Nebraska, which is where our paths crossed. Started working in the nutrition space. Really, I think what I loved about that space and why I stayed in it so long is our early days, Ryan, of like being on the sales floor and helping customers figure out their journey. And I didn't really know it then, but I definitely know it now that I found a lot of fulfillment in helping people. And I think part of that got rooted into me at an early age in the military, and then it just kind of continued to grow. And my whole life has been rooted around that now, around service. And so, as you know, spent about 10 years in GNC franchising and opening different stores. You guys had conquered the Nebraska market, so I moved into the Kansas market, and most of my time was spent building out Kansas and Oklahoma, a couple stores in Colorado. And while on that journey, through some mutual friends of ours, started working in the development of product space and really got hooked on the creation and innovation of things. I love building new things that haven't been done before. And in the sports nutrition space, that's very hard. And so I focused a lot in packaging and consumer products, the way that you feel when you look at something, it makes you feel something. And I think that can be in structures, it can be in packaging, it can be in the way that people show up in services. But I just love the combination of building beautiful things that make people feel connected to them and create experiences. And that can be, it can be in a lot of formats. And so I'm really, really passionate about that, which is what led me into the next space. I spent about 10 years building a sports nutrition company. I sold it in 2017. And during that time, I kind of started getting maybe more mature, figuring out what I wanted out of my life, and settled down and got married and started having a kid about 7 years ago, I guess, God. And it was during that time that I started reflecting on my life and started to really go back and take an accounting of what mattered in life. And I think we all love, and a lot of your listeners probably love, the chase of building something cool and the grit that it takes to be an entrepreneur. And it's a special thing. I really love it. But the why behind what you do is, I think, what I started to really think about. And And through that discovery process, figured out that a lot of my why started with the military, and that I hadn't really understood how much I valued learning to be a servant leader in the military, and what that meant in life. And so as I started going down that path of the recollection of my life and where all the great things that I had in my life started, it kept coming back to there. So I started working with veterans, hiring them in my businesses, and then through that started to get an awareness of kind of what I believed the challenges were in becoming a civilian after serving for a long time. And that's really where I started to insert my efforts, was doing research around, not necessarily around veteran suicide. Like I knew there was a big problem. For those listeners out there that don't know how big that problem is, in the 20 years that we were in war in the Middle East, there were about 7,000 combat deaths, a little more. In that same period of time, there were almost 200,000 suicides. So you think of in a percentage basis, veterans or military service members are 3,000 times more likely to die after they get home than on the battlefield. And that really shook me to think about, you've got these servant leaders who want to serve democracy and protect people and take care of people, and then they get home and they can't figure out how to survive in America. And so that, talk about a big problem set, and like what I think needs to be done to solve that. And through my work and research, I figured out, came to a hypothesis that it wasn't the combat trauma specifically that was causing suicide. Certainly can contribute to it, but it's the loss of identity and being part of something significant and important as serving democracy next to your brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
And that when your new civilian life comes around, none of the rules of the chain of command matched with the corporate ladder. None of the ways of communicating with all of our weird acronyms in the military, no one knew what those meant. The directness and the aggressive posture and forward leaning into your mission in the civilian world scares the shit out of people. And so, I started to look at that space and think, okay, well, that's actually a place where I can insert innovation and try to fix the problem before it ever starts. And that's how UHP was created.
Yeah, which I can't wait to dive into that more, because it is such an awesome cause, so mission driven. But before we do that, I just want to circle back a little bit to some of the things you did before UHP, kind of what shaped you, like when you really fell in love with helping people and realizing you wanted to help people. And I think you are such an interesting person, because talking to you, even looking at you, I don't think you're somebody that loves to talk about what you've done or even share the impact that you've made. I mean, you show up here in a black sweatshirt and a UHP hat, and I love it, right? I mean, you're not a flashy guy, but you've done so many important things. And I don't think if I don't pull them out of you, you're not going to share them. So I'm going to pull them out of you. First off, back in the GNC days, we obviously had a nutrition company where you were a customer, and you were the biggest customer because you were so successful in those 10 GNC stores. You were running them multi-state. I think at one time you were living in maybe Nebraska, then Kansas, and I came out and visited you in Colorado. Which was just you took me for some awesome sushi. That was years and years ago, but it was such a good time. And then from there, you said, I'm going to take on the next challenge, which is to build a national product company. And yes, you were really passionate about packaging, but there were so many more things you did with Performix and what you did within the GNC community and how you really pulled great products, people, and packaging together. So I don't know what my question is outside of just dive in a little bit more into that first transition, the transition of being a really successful GNC franchisee into starting Performix.
And hold on a sec, because Matt also said in there at some point he rode bulls, and we just all glossed over that. Like, can we like at some point talk about that, Matt? Like, you just decided to ride bulls too.
I just want to say one thing. We're from Nebraska, and you ride bulls here. You're from Iowa, and you do less dangerous things in Iowa.
He just glossed over it. I'm like, wait, what? You rode bulls? Like, what is this? Okay, you don't have to dive into that, Matt, but that's pretty cool.
I'd win a few bucks riding bulls in Nebraska and then drive across to Iowa and lose it all at the gambling boats you guys are doing.
There we go.
But yeah, talk a little bit about that transition, GNC to Performix first.
Sure. Yep. Well, back to your point and question around, the why were my stores so successful, and I can take that into what made Performix successful. I never approached I remember the terms of all the franchise, not all of them, but a lot of them, like, I'm slinging product, I'm the whole acting, and people come in like, oh, you look so great. And I never took that approach. I always took the approach of getting to know my customers and spending real time with them, not asking closed-ended questions, or open-ended questions that didn't require an answer, just spending just lots of time getting to know them and getting to know their families, what they do for jobs. And once you know those things, you can then take I want to help this person. And as you know, Ryan, it wasn't all like sports nutrition customers. I don't know how many women who came in with menopause in their 40s and 50s crying, and I'm giving them hugs. I'm like, it's going to be okay. And I'm 18, 20, 21, 22 years old. And I love that. And I call those customers a couple of days later, like, hey, how's that working for your hot flashes? Like black cohosh, how's that working for your hot flashes? And so I just got to know, I have so many characters in my mind of customers that I had over the years that are still there. I think about them all the time. It's very bizarre, actually. But I took that same approach from building my stores and the customer service that I put into those stores into my brand at Performix. And I really believe that experiences, I believe life is about experiences and growing consciousness in your life. You want to continue to learn, and in my case, and I think most people's case, just be a better human being. And so I learned from all the people that I've had as customers. I learned from my employees. I learned from the creation process, and I loved building things that made a difference. And the whole idea of the brand Performix, when I first started it, was I wanted to take that same close touch from the stores into a brand where the brand itself and the places you sold were going to be the vehicle to get them into the community, where you could make a difference, not just sell them pre-workout powder, but creating clubs and communities and content. And I think early on in the business, when I first got going, I started doing some celebrity stuff where I bring celebrities in and have them do product work with us and shoot content with us. And that was early days of influencer marketing. I think before it was even a thing. Certainly before it was a social media thing. This was more like Us Weekly and things like that. But along the way, the brand got so big so fast, partially because I knew the channel so well. GNC is where it really exploded. I think within 3 or 4 years, it became $100 million brand there. And then we started pivoting into all these other channels. And when you're running a business and it's growing really fast and you're hooked on creating new things, and the core of what your brand means has to always be central to every decision you make, the values, the vision for the brand. And I found it really challenging when it got big, really big, and their demands from whether it be investor demands or customer demands, make more things, create more products. And you start to maybe in hindsight during that time, you start your customer becomes the customers and not the consumer, because you've got this big, massive organism that requires feeding, meaning you have to keep it growing. And so I learned so much during the time I was building that about brands and how important it is to keep the thing about your brand special and always front and center. But I fought to do it all the time because of the pressures of growing the company. I think there was a point where the business had gotten to a size, and the customer, in this case GNC, was such a big part of it that there became concentration challenges. And we'd already taken on private equity, and we're always working to fix those challenges. And that customer and brand have struggled to stay relevant, probably ever since then, honestly, the GNC brand. And I think for all of us that were there, I guess people would say I maybe have some Stockholm syndrome with GNC. I just want to keep helping them. I still do work for them. I do leader development work for their organization on my campus. But I think where you came from is where you're always going to be passionate about. And so those early days, though, of building and creating and grinding, and pivoting when things got tough, I remember always the most important part of those early days for me, and I think for most entrepreneurs, are having a very clear vision of where you're going and having the ability to be gritty and pivot when you need to be successful. And that never changes. I'm sure you guys see that in the businesses that you're creating as
Mhm.
well. Franchisees come into businesses or you're working with a franchisor and something changes in the market and competition comes or something changes, and the entrepreneur's ability to be pliable and flexible and have enough vision to change course if they need to stay relevant, because the sports nutrition business changes so fast. It's not a
Right.
category where customers are very loyal, and two, it's the next big buzzy thing that's coming out. And so you have to continue to innovate and pivot and be on the forward leaning edge of innovation to stay relevant in it. I always felt that pressure.
It sounds like you were passionate about it, Matt, but you maybe stopped being fun for you at some point. I mean, everything I just heard there, like, it seems like that grit was there, that passion was there, but
Yeah.
there's a time when we all wake up, we're like, this isn't fun anymore. Like, I don't want to do this anymore. Is that what happened?
1,000% right, Tyler. And I talk
Yeah.
about this. I do a lot of teaching at my school now, and I always get questions like, "What's the biggest lesson you've learned?" And in every business I've been in, the biggest lesson I've learned is that when you start something out of passion, which ultimately ladders to the purpose of why you do what you do, it's really easy to work yourself out of being sitting in that space of impact because, you know, GNC was, I'll give you an example there, and I'll give you a performance. At GNC, I love being on the sales floor, working with customers. It fed me. I loved it. But my ambition to be an entrepreneur and to build scale outdrove that for whatever reason. And I looked up one day and I had, I don't know, 10 or 12, 15 stores. And I didn't love what I did anymore because I was basically managing college kids running my stores and, inventory issues and supply chain and all the things you're dealing with and accounting and legal. And I just fell out of love with doing that. And then the same thing happened at Performix. The business, I love the creation and I love seeing customers interact with our brand and I loved building it. But then it got really big. And, once we got over 150 employees, I started to feel like I was losing my ability to be innovative and creative and stay close to the customer. And I think a lot of CEOs get to that point. We'll call them founders actually, because they're not even CEOs at that point. It might be a title, but they get to the point where they're like, they're so passionate about what they do, and you're sitting perfectly in the space that you love. And then what you manifest it becomes, and then you have to shift into being something else to get it to the next side and to continue to scale it. And I know that about myself now. And in this business, I will not put myself in that position. Um, I'll hire around me to make sure that I'm able to stay visionary, creative, still teach on my campus, spend time with students, spend time with coaches, uh, you know, do the special things that's made the business what it is, and finding unique talent in weird places or special places. I'm third time's a charm. I've learned I love so much what I do now, and I'm not going to give that up ever. So yeah.
It's an amazing transition because the next part of this is talking about we believe entrepreneurs are the greatest sidekicks. And so, in order to be a great entrepreneur, you have to serve a lot of people and you have to understand who you're serving and who you are a sidekick to. So, let's go on to what you're doing now because it's amazing. Who are you a sidekick to and who are you serving now, Matt?
So the school is the only school in the country that focuses exclusively on transitioning veterans out of the military. You can't be a civilian and come to our school. And they're just one, there's not in a very easy access to federal funding for something like this, because all the legislation has been written for higher education institutions like University of Nebraska or Wyoming Technical Institute or whatever. And so getting something legislatively through the system that was only for veterans was very challenging. But it was important to me when I looked at all the data, we ran about 10 pilots, and I started doing this when I was still running Performix, and I connected it to that mission. And I let our customers see what we were doing and be a part of that. And John Cena got involved in it as well, and was, he loved Performix, but he liked Performix. He absolutely loved what we were doing in the veteran space, and he spent time on campus mentoring veterans and still mentors veterans that he met there. But the amount of um, purpose that I get from spending time with a veteran and helping them understand, one, you're not broken or messed up. You're going through a challenge and transitioning to a new thing, and those when you're anybody moving from one thing to another, whether you're moving from a relationship out of one or into one, or moving from a job, identity becomes part of it, because 8 hours, 10 hours a day, you're working. So that's part of who you are. And for your kids, you want to model working in a space that you love, not going to a job that you hate. And so, early on, I distilled it down to one word and said, if there's anything that is driving the epidemic of suicide in the veteran community, it is the loss of identity and purpose being the main word. And so, how do you give someone who is going through something really really confronting, in that they're leaving everything they've ever known? You go into the military when you're 18 years old, typically, and you are indoctrinated into a way of thinking, into a tribe, into a set of values, into a chain of command that is very clear. You're given living expenses. You're given a very clear understanding of how you accelerate or ascend in rank. You're given an MOS or a job, and your job has to be done in order for the team to succeed. If you fail, people die. And so the stakes, it can't be higher. The reward and feeling of being part of something so special can't be bigger. And you give it, say, 10 years, 12 years, 15 years, you're deploying, you're fighting wars, you're coming back, you're trying to have normalcy and build a family. But how normal is it to leave for 9 months, go overseas and kill people, and then come back and reintegrate into your life for 6, 12 months and get deployed again? You think about your kids when you're gone for 9 months at a time, multiple times throughout a 10-year period. So I say all that to help the listener understand what it's like to be in those boots. Now you're like, I've gotten to a point in my life. I'm 30, call it 28 years old. I've been in 10 years. I'm probably an E6, E7, which means I'm making $60,000 a year. My family's tired, I'm tired, and I want to start a new thing. And a lot of these guys, they make the decision, I want to get out. And they don't think about what they're going to do next. And people are probably like, really? But because there's so much riding on the decision just to get out, you don't, the big decisions to be, what am I going to do next? But the big decision to them is, I'm just going to get out. And so they go and start the transition process. And when they get out, they basically have to think about when you're 18-year-olds in high school, and you're like, what are you going to do now? And that's the position they're in. But they're 28. So let's say half of them go to college. I don't know about you, but when I'm 30 years old, I don't want to sit next to an 18-year-old kid after I've been kicking doors in combat for 10 years.
Yeah.
I don't want to listen to any of that shit coming out of that kid's mouth. No offense to an 18-year-old, but it's
Complete perspective, different perspective on life.
And so imagine the pressure you feel to assimilate in a university. You're 28, surrounded by 18-year-olds. That's one. So you fail out of that. Or you take a job and you don't have a college degree. And so you take a job and it's a labor job. Well, let's say that you laterally moved from communications in the military to communications in the civilian world. They're not the same thing at all, because the rules, the way you communicate with your team, the chain of command versus the corporate ladder, all the things are just so different. And so it's like you're a baby at 28 years old trying to communicate with adults in a different language. And that's how it feels. So it's what happens then. You start to isolate. Mm-hmm. And when you start to isolate, you go home and your wife, who's been with you for 10 years through these deployments, who deploy with you in some ways, not physically, but mentally and emotionally, that wife is ready for you to be a civilian and a husband and a father and be there and be present and focused. And you are going through probably the most stress you've ever been through in your life. And it's hard to share it because you're a battle hardened warrior. And to be vulnerable with your wife, which is what we should all be, but we can't sometimes. It's just, especially these guys, it takes a lot of courage to share how you feel about, your fear of failure. A lot of times, whether it's in college or a job, people don't understand you. So then you isolate even more.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, your wife is like, I thought you were getting out to make a better life for us. And now you're even worse than when you got out.
Yeah. Matt, can I ask you something about that? Because I always had a sense of how challenging it was to transition out of the military, but you just said something there that I had never really thought about it. I had never considered the process or the piece of when the decision was made and how most vets don't have something already lined up. So take that into just kind of, into the working world. Usually when people have left jobs that I've worked with them or businesses where we've employed them, they say, I got a new job. I'm going somewhere else, right? And so they had prepared early, they had set up interviews, they had gone through the whole process, and it's a soft landing. They take a couple weeks off and they're off and running into the next thing. But because the military is their whole life and it's such a big decision to get out, what you're saying is usually that preparation process just isn't even considered because it's so emotionally taxing just to get out.
That's right.
So then they find you and you identified that problem. Well, the core of my question here is though, because something that we went by really quickly that I think is so fascinating. You went from a extremely successful entrepreneur in the nutrition space, right? And then somewhere along the line, you identified your passion for this problem, to be a sidekick to, transitioning vets. You started it to sort of commingle with your former business, but then you made a total transition. You went from the guy I knew in nutrition, the guy that was considered the best of the best in nutrition, and you completely changed your life to solve this problem. So just talk to me a little bit more about why, like what happened with you to flip your whole life on its head and say, I'm going to go solve this problem that I've never attacked before. Because most people can't transition into something like that after establishing who they are once already.
That's a good question. It'll dive us down a bit of a rabbit hole, but I'm down. I'll do it. I think that when anyone, and the veterans that go through this included, when you hit a point in your life that is a inflection point, identity, you just said you're the nutrition guy, the best that there was, and thank you, by the way. I don't know if that's true, but thank you. And that was what I did, and I got to a point, as we were talking earlier, that I didn't really like it anymore. I was at the pinnacle of my career, and I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. But it wasn't a decision driven by just pure, like all of a sudden I felt it. It was a lot of things in my own life that I was realizing. My mom, I went into the military when I was 18. My mom got in a car accident right after I went in, paralyzed from the neck down. And, and I had grown up with her basically. I left home and moved with her around Nebraska and Wyoming. That's how I got into bulls, because my uncles, her brothers were all bull riders. And so, that going through that with her, there was a lot of pent up trauma associated to that situation. And I was 37 years old, living in New York City, having a successful company, have the life that most people are like, oh, New York, and you have all these things and house in the country and all the stuff people want. But I really wasn't happy. And all the time you knew me, I was never really happy. I was struggling with things inside that I hadn't figured out yet. And I went through this inflection point where she died, and all these memories from my childhood came back. And it required me to go back in my life and figure out, where did this desire to serve come from in the first place? And certainly my desire to serve met a familiar place in the military, because that is very much what the military is, servant leadership. But what attracted me to go into the military in the first place, I believe, was associated to when you're traumatized as a child in any way, physically, mentally, emotionally, sexually, whatever, you have two paths you can go down. One might be, I want to hurt other people because I got hurt. And the other might be, I want to help other people because I don't want anybody to feel like I felt. And thankfully for humanity, 99.9% of people head down the right path. But inside of that, you have to at some point in your life decide that you don't just want to help other people. You want to be healthy and feel good about yourself too. And I spent the first 35, 36 years of my life trying to help other people and make them happy. And I never really spent any time with myself. And I think that part of, entrepreneurship and life, as we said, is about gaining consciousness and growing as a leader, as a person. And I gained a lot of consciousness in that time of my life and figured out through that I understood a lot better about what caused me to want to serve. And then it gave me an idea that all of these kids that we enlist in the military, a lot of them, they come from backgrounds like I came from. They are maybe running to something and running away from something at the same time. And so what happens when you get out and you're running away and to at the same time, you have this sort of subconscious conscious collision of like not really understanding why you do what you do. And so if you think about these kids who have spent their whole life serving other people and now they're getting out, and in order for them to be successful in a new system, this new civilian system, you got to find health for yourself. You're not in that posture of serving everybody. You need to take care of your family and take care of yourself. And the more you love yourself, the more you can love other people and help other people. And so, I hit that pivot point at that point in my life, and it's what caused this shift. And I was fortunate, lucky, put in a position, however you want to say it. I think I've accumulated experiences that stack together to create this vision. And while I've been building this all along the way, I'm not a religious person. I'm not even, I would say I'm aspiringly spiritual. But there's been signs along the way while I build this that are just undeniably not interesting, special. And it is some sort of, I'll call it the hand of God, the hand of energy, the hand of Buddha, the hand of Jesus, whatever. I don't know. But something's happening over the top of this, because there's no way you could architect. I couldn't architect this here. It's all happened, out of a desire here. And so we talk about sidekicks and how important mentorship and sidekicks are. And I view my job now to be in this position to help other people find the same path to success in every way, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, through the work that we do here. And when you look at our coaching staff and the leaders that have come and been a part of this, like celebrities and executives and known generals and people that come there, it touches them. And it's not me, it's the mission. It's the gift that I've been able to build this is something way bigger than I am.
Right.
And so anyway,
and I love what you said there. There's a couple things. I'm just going to ask a couple personal questions, and you don't have to answer if you don't want to. But you're a sidekick to so many people. But that transition point, that's hard to do. Realizing maybe you weren't happy, you want to follow a passion, all that stuff, that self work that you did. Who were your sidekicks? Who helped you through that process?
I've had some amazing mentors in my life. Zink knows one of them. Rick Bronner is his name. Great guy, a franchisee, a GNC franchisee, still is. He's the last of the Mohicans of the guys that we were all in there with. Owns a bunch of stores in Texas. He was a mentor for me early on in my career. Still talk to him, probably a couple times a month at least. I met this really special guy after that time when I just got into business. I was raising my first round of capital for that business. And he was at an investor conference that I was at in Jackson Hole, small little group. His name is Charlie Meacham. And Charlie, his life is, a movie could be made of his life. He was a World War II veteran, got out, went back to the law firm that he was practicing at, started working on a little production and broadcasting company called Taft Broadcasting. And for those that don't know Taft, because it was built and then sold in the early 80s by Charlie. It's the creator of Hanna-Barbera. He put Hanna-Barbera together, and he became the CEO because his client during the Cold War blew himself up in a bomb shelter on accident. Lit a cigar playing poker, about to play poker in his bomb shelter, and kaboom.
Dang.
And so Charlie stepped into the company and built the first amusement parks. He created the Jetsons with Jetsons was. Flintstones, all the fast. There's a picture of him as an orchestra. He's standing in front of the orchestra of all of his characters, Yogi Bear and all these people. And anyway, so Charlie was just sitting in Jackson Hole, and he had a house there, and he happened to be at this meeting, and he and I connected. He made a little investment. Him and Arnold Palmer together made a little investment in my first round of capital, and he'd been mentoring me ever since, 20 years almost. And he's now 96, 97, still kicking, still super sharp. But he gave the eulogies at Neil Armstrong's funeral, at Arnold Palmer's funeral. He's mentored all of the major golfers. He's just a fascinating guy. So sidekicks for me, he is one, but I view all people that, there's certain people you spend a lot of time with. But when you find special people in your life who you see something in them that you want to be and you want to emulate, whatever those characteristics are, you start to spend time with them and ask them for advice. And I really believe that relationship, the mentee-mentor relationship, is one of the most special relationships, because it's not a transaction of dollars or equity, or it's a transaction of fulfillment both ways. Mm-hmm. I know something that can help you. I would love to teach it to you. I value very much what you want to teach me. Thank you so much. It just goes back and forth. It's just a special thing. So nothing 100%. More important, I think.
Hey, Sidekicks, it's Ryan Zink here. I'll never forget the moment I opened my first franchise, helping my first customer, hiring my first employee, and cashing my first check. It wasn't just a business, it was the beginning of living life on my terms. When Tyler and I started Franchise Sidekick, we reimagined how people would find brands and succeed in franchise ownership. We're the fastest growing franchise advisory group in the country because we built a smarter, tech-driven system. Our approach has helped people just like you purchase over 10,000 franchise locations, and we've earned a 5-star rating on Google doing it. Now we're sharing exactly how we do it in a quick 20-minute webinar titled 10,000 Locations and Counting, the Franchise Buyer's Blueprint. If you're ready to explore a path to financial freedom and take control over your future, this is your first step. And did I mention our services are always 100% free? Click the link below to sign up now, because you deserve to live life on your terms. Which I think for people that are listening to this that are aspiring entrepreneurs, one of the most important lessons one of the most important things you can do is surround yourself with people that you want to be like. It's not easy. Sometimes you got a target number 1 and they say no, and you got to go to target number 2, but it's one of the most important things. Matt, I want to really spend some time painting the picture of UHP. I mean, we've just scratched the surface of it. And we've talked a little bit about who it serves and what it is, but I want to paint a picture first so people can kind of visually imagine this. And Timmy, I don't know if we've got photos you can show or if we can put them in the show notes, but please do if you can. I'm going to share my own experience with the people that are listening, just to kind of, paint the picture here. So Matt, I've seen pictures online. You and I had talked about it several times over the years, but I was traveling down and we had just talked franchising recently, and you had just made a comment like, hey, let me know if you're close. And I was coming down like the next weekend. So I reached out to you and I said, I just looked it up. I'm going to be about an hour away. And you invited me and a couple of friends and our kids over. And I had a sense of what it was going to be, but honestly, I wasn't prepared. And so you give me directions and we're driving through the hills of Arkansas. I mean, it feels like you're in the middle of nowhere for a really long time. Hills, dirt roads, trees on both sides. Like, where in the heck are we going? And then after about an hour on these roads, it's like, take a left here. And to me, it felt like you were just turning in between some trees, right? And then as soon as you turn and you get behind the trees, you kind of go up this hill. And once you get to the top of the hill, you look down, and this is one of the most beautiful properties I've ever seen. Would you say 700 acres?
Yeah.
700 acres. And I know you're constantly improving it, but what I saw was just hills over the top of this river that is flowing through that is amazing, bald eagles. And then you start to see this infrastructure that you're building, right? You start to see that the cabins that you're building, and I don't know if you call it a commissary or a kitchen, but a place for people to eat. You start to see the gathering areas that you've put together for people to network. I'd probably say fellowship, but you call it whatever you want, right? Like for people to do that together. And then of course the Beaver Dome. The Beaver Dome is like the heart of that place, which I want you to talk about because it's so cool. And when I think of you and everything you've done, I've always thought of you of the guy that goes for it, right? Like you didn't just decide to help vets transition. You decided to buy a 700-acre property in the middle of Arkansas and go develop it into something that's one of the coolest places on earth, right? And so I don't know where the question is outside of just give your own perspective of what this place is, what it means to you. And then I want to hear your perspective of the Beaver Dome because that place is sick.
For sure. Well, I think you hit on a bunch of the things. First of all, the education that we teach is what's called the Purpose Blueprint. I wrote a book about my experiences working with veterans that have not published yet, but I will in the next year or so. And the blueprint essentially outlines the things in my life that I have found be a recipe for the just go for it type of mentality. And they're rooted in what's called think, train, feel, and lead. And there are 4 segments that intersect with each other. If you look at our logo, they all intersect at the center. It's up here too. And think, train, feel, and lead are intellectual strategies, physical fitness, emotional awareness, and values work. And the easiest way to understand is physical fitness grows mental and emotional health. We've seen that in clinical studies, psychologists, everyone says that you work out, you cold plunge, all those things make you feel better. They release endorphins. The same thing applies to having a set of values and never compromising them and using your physical fitness to hone and codify your values. You work out, you think about the things that matter to you. You meditate, you pray, you learn, you get perspective, and all those things force multiply each other. And so when you are building your blueprint, when a veteran comes to campus and they work on this blueprint, they're taking an accounting of what things matter in their life. So what do they care about? What are they passionate about? What gets them excited? What are their skills and experience? Like what have you done in the past that can complement a strategy of profession? And then once you have that, you've got a career identified. A lot of these guys want to serve, which is why going into the coaching space, which is one of the curriculums we have, is personal trainers and health coaches and nutritionists. I did this, you did this, Ryan. We get to serve our customers every day and feel good about making an impact. I loved helping those women and going through menopause with black cohosh. I loved calling them and saying, how's it going? And so when I looked at all the careers across the industries that you could be upskilled into fairly quickly, that paid at least in the medium range, and that are service and impact based, it was easy to identify those coaching spaces as the first place to go. And so, put pretty simply, our programs that veterans go through are a transition strategy, the identification of purpose within that, a upskilling to that vocation or trade, certification, graduation, placement, and support to make sure they integrate, and then working with the companies as well. So, a franchise group, let's say Planet Fitness, I think it's a franchise, or
Yep.
Lifetime is not one, but let's say Lifetime, because a lot of people know what that is. Great personal training business, great gym, great. They build people, they invest in their people. Their personal training business is very successful. We would say, hey, based on these criteria, we think you make a great Lifetime Fitness coach. That's a great place to start connecting with them and place them in. And so that experience that they go through at UHP is 17 days long. And while they're there, they're weaving their way through think, train, feel, and lead places, the grounds, the river. We have something called Space, which is a big capsule into the ground with a fire pit in it where they share and they open up and they're vulnerable. I lead those first first nights often where I'm vulnerable. And I learned that in the very first experience. I shared the thing that I was going through that I touched on, but probably a little heavy for this conversation. But the thing that I went through that shifted my identity when I was in 37 at the top of my career. I shared that with 40 veterans who I'd never met. And in sharing it was like taking rocks out of my rucksack and putting them on the ground. It made me feel free. It also made me feel strong. And I looked in all of their eyes and I saw empathy for not pity. I saw empathy. I saw, and I also saw the same suffering in a lot of them. And so that became a ritual on the campus at night early on, where after the day of training, physically, mentally, emotionally, or physically, mentally, and through their values work, the end card was emotional transformation and shift, and that was going through a hour and a half session around the campfire, and one person getting up and saying, "Hey, I went through this. You know, I went in the military because I had an abusive dad. He beat the shit out of me. I never thought I'd be abusive, but I went in the military and I loved hurting people. And now I'm coming back. I got to figure out how to reconcile that. And I know it doesn't start on the battlefield. It starts in my childhood. And our coaches and counselors hearing that then allows them to start working with them on blueprint processes within that space, which would be the feel and emotion space. But what they just did by taking it out and in front of other people is let go of it in some way. They started the process, and once it's out, you can't put it back in. Like, it's just, what goes out does not come back in the same way. And so, everybody's going through a different journey in their time going out of the military. Some people are physically struggling, some people are emotionally struggling, some people are spiritually struggling, some people are financially struggling. And UHP really, if you boil down, is a place to come to take a knee and go through a journey of self-discovery and healing and vocation and a new purpose and new identity. And just to touch on why the campus and the structures are so important, going back to our conversation about packaging in the supplement space, I didn't think that if I had made a terrible product and a great package, you might call that good marketing. I couldn't do something like that. So when I was building supplements, I was building technologies into my supplements and packaging that would complement those technologies and vice versa. Same thing applies to this place. If I am doing this powerful work and I want these people to feel special about themselves so they can truly feel special about themselves, then the place that they come, they need to be connected into something spiritual and something that makes them feel something. And so the campus, it was very intentionally designed to bring out emotions when you look at certain things. We're jogging through the trails and there's a huge mirror in the trees. And you're like, what is that? And it's a reflective mirror. You're looking into it, and you're small in these big trees. And what's a lesson in that? Why is that important to talk about? And or you're sitting down by the river meditating and or praying, and it's the space is so hard to describe. And Ryan, you came to it and said it. I've been doing this for 4 years, and I've been talking about this place for 4 years. And every single person that I talked to about it, I was like, oh yeah, cool. That sounds really cool. Here's the video. Wow, that's really cool. They come out there like, whoa, it's hard to describe. And I think it's hard to describe because it's so many sensory things coming in at once. Beautiful buildings, beautiful forests and trees and rivers and bald eagles and foxes and deer, and it's just bananas. It's awesome.
It's amazing, Matt. So I would love to hear some stories about some success maybe that you've had with veterans, like specific things that maybe one or two that stand out in your head that have been fantastic that you can really point back to.
For sure. I've got a perfect one, actually. The very first research pilot that I ran down in Texas, I rented a Boy Scout camp. It was a terrible little spot in terms of like the beds were like teeny tiny, and it was cold because it was wintertime, and I could get it for a pretty good price because there was no kids in there in the wintertime. It was way too cold. And there was no heating, and the gym was terrible. I saw all the pictures, but it was special because it was the first place we ever did it. There was a kid there that had been discharged from the Marines because he had gotten injured. He gotten shot, I think, and he was home on leave. He's still in, and this is maybe 6-8 months after he had been shot, and he had gotten hooked on pain pills while he was in, and when he came home, he got hooked on heroin because he couldn't get pain pills. And when he went back to when his leave was out, he went back and he got drug tested. And they found it in the system, and they threw him out, which is a dishonorable discharge. And so this kid ends up homeless, ends up in a halfway house. His probation officer, because he also got arrested, probation officer has him in a halfway house, and somebody, I don't remember who it was, told him about this pilot, and he said, "Hey, you can go to that if you want." And so I had to sign in for him, and like he came to the thing, and there's about 40 guys in that first class, men and women, and he went through it. And I remember his blueprinting process, and crying and telling the story about what had happened to him. And at the end, his blueprint was, I want to get healthy so that I can help other veterans go through what I just went through or what I'm going through. I lost touch with him for about 2 years, not because of any other reason than his life got busy and I was in New York, having a family of my own. And when I started to look at buying this property down in Arkansas, I saw on LinkedIn that he had been accepted to the University of Arkansas for a master's program in counseling, with a specific focus on veterans. And so, I reached out to him, and he had finished his undergrad. He'd become a personal trainer. He had trained his way through college because he didn't have GI Bill, no education. So he used the money he earned with the certification he got at UHP to go to college, and then got accepted into a master's program. And now today he is in Arkansas in Fayetteville at the VA, and is one of their main counselors. And so now, come full circle, we refer people to him all the time. And
wow.
So that's just a really cool end-to-end story. There's stories of entrepreneurship, of another guy who came through the program maybe 2 years ago, decided that he was going to, when you come to UHP, you cannot bring alcohol, you cannot bring drugs, you cannot bring only prescription medication, no opiates, you can't be addicted to anything, you can't bring tobacco. I mean, it is about as a clean place as you can think of. And we're very strict on that. If you're in an addictive state, you cannot open your heart and your soul and your mind to transformation. It just doesn't work. And it's not fair to other people who might have those same challenges around them. This kid had gotten sober just to come to UHP. And while here, decided I'm just going to stay sober. Wrote his blueprint. I want to open my own gym. I want to serve people in my community. And where he was then, where he is now, is just a testament to his own grit and resiliency and focus, and putting purpose at the center of your life and putting all of your energy into achieving it. He now owns 2 CrossFit gyms, super successful, hires other veterans, and mentors them. So there's just, I can name 100, I can name a million stories.
Yeah.
And just to tack on to the end of that, how I got reconnected with Ryan, I was on a road trip. I think I was actually driving to Arkansas to move here from New York. And I had a place in upstate New York with a tractor. And I wanted to bring my tractor to my new 700 acres. It was a little tractor. And I was driving thinking about franchise systems and, building a franchise here at UHP for veterans to get out of the military, go through the education, and then get all of the funding to open it, so they have no debt. So one of my big personal goals is to create programs that not just are, one, this is not a pity play. I want to give veterans money or businesses because I feel bad for them. They're truly great leaders and they make great entrepreneurs. And for those of you that are building franchise systems out there, hiring a veteran is one of the best things you'll ever do because they'll kick in doors for you all day long. They're very, very resilient and very, very driven. But I believe that there's an opportunity to build a franchise system specifically for veterans where they don't have no debt when they open the door. And that funding will come from our school. It puts money into a nonprofit to be able to give them the ability to open those businesses. But imagine putting 1,000 franchises on the ground. There's no debt. These franchises, the average CrossFit gym does about $350,000 a year. It makes about $150,000 of free cash flow. So imagine those businesses each pay in a 5% royalty. So you're talking a $350 million top line, 5% royalty on top of that, $17 million roughly or so of royalty going into a foundation to pay forward the gift they were given. I could never give that much money away every year. So it's going to start to compound. And what you create is the biggest endowment in history of for veterans that then shapes policy and supports. And the most beautiful thing about it is most of these endowments most of these veteran organizations are driven by contributions from special interest people. Like, hey, VSO, American Legion. Nope, not picking on them, but they all do it. Hey, American Legion, we at this place, we really care about these things. So here's $10 million. We want you to go up to Capitol Hill and tell everybody up there what about our thing that we think is important. And we got to help these veterans, and we're going to help them. And usually they want to help veterans, but they also want to help themselves. So this would be something that funds, and it'd be funded by veterans, run by veterans, and no special interest money going into it. And so anyway, it's a dream of mine to build a franchise system that creates this flywheel of creation of funds that's directed by that population. Anyway, I'll shut up now. I've been talking.
No, it's good, man. And so I love how passionate you are. And you're a dream chaser. So there's no doubt in my mind you're going to do that. What about people listening that know a vet, right? Somebody that is interested in UHP. Like, what is the process for somebody to apply, to get selected? How do people get there?
Great question. So we're like any university. You go through an application process online. Then a admission specialist will set up a Zoom call with you, and they're all veterans, so they've been where you've been. Most of them are graduates of our program. You go through an interview process, and then you pick your dates. And we have a George Bush II, second. No child left behind mentality on education. So even if you don't have any of your JABIL benefits left, we have all kinds of great partners out in the nonprofit space that will sponsor someone through the program. So, if you have a veteran working for you who's struggling, even if they don't want to be a personal trainer, most of our course, while we do train physically very hard and we do learn about anatomy and physiology, and we do take the test, most of the program is about helping human beings move forward, and that includes yourself. And so, it's a great place to transition. It's also a great place to send somebody who has struggled in transition. And it's a great place to hire people out of because they've got clarity on what they want to do in their life.
Mm-hmm. Love that. And what about the vocations? I know you've mentioned a couple of them, personal training, fitness is one. I think maybe you mentioned it, or maybe I just remember culinary, I think is another one. What are some of the vocations that you have there?
Yeah, we didn't talk about some of these buildings you were talking about, Beaver Dome, the culinary school. So I'll talk about the vocations, and then about the vocations and the buildings they're done in. So certified personal trainer is an 18-day course. It's 140 hours in 18 days. So very busy schedule, very similar to the military, train, deploy, theoretical and practical knowledge in succession, and then a test at the end. It's all the military is, doing a lot of that stuff. So same thing, you go through that. That curriculum is taught in what's called the Beaver Dome, which is a product of Beaver Fit USA, awesome company out of Reno, Nevada. Two veterans that built a fitness company that sell military fitness equipment to the military. But that Beaver Dome is an 18,000 square foot facility that has a recovery center, cold plunges, saunas, compression. We have a clinical research lab with some sports nutrition brands. We have classroom space in it. So it's a fully encompassed type of immersive program. They spend about 3 hours a day inside of it, and the rest of it's out on the grounds, wandering through the trees and doing doing some of that more self-discovery work. We just launched and finished the building. Hopefully we'll be able to Tim, you'll be able to put it up on the screen when you're going through this. But we just launched the Pure Life Culinary School, which is a partnership with Nestle Pure Life, formerly Nestle Pure Life, now called Primo. And that building is the first building in the world that will teach culinary nutrition from seed all the way to stomach. Meaning,
Wow.
we have a greenhouse. The students that go through the nutrition program will be planting food. They will be farming food, harvesting food. They will take that food into the kitchen and prepare that food. They will serve that food. They will learn the supply chain and business of food, and they'll be licensed as a nutritionist when they leave. So those nutritionist students will pair up with those personal training students, and they will be giving them advice on how to achieve their goals on the campus while they're there. Every class we measure, everyone wears a Whoop, so we can see their stress levels, their heart rate 30 days prior, and for a year after they leave. It's all paid for. That allows us to see data and stick rates and behavior changes. The average body fat loss in 3 weeks on our campus is about 2.5 percentage points. The average muscle gain is 2 pounds of lean muscle. So pretty big composition changes. In the spring this year, we will launch our entrepreneurship courses, which will be a 5-day introduction to entrepreneurship. And that is free. It doesn't cost anything. And then a 3 or 4 week entrepreneurship program that will be basically how you launch a business. Conceptualize your plan, build a plan, marketing, balance sheet, cash flow, P&L, the whole thing. And the plan is that the foundation will launch a year from now, and it'll start giving out grants of up to $100,000 per graduate.
It's amazing.
Which will satisfy that thing we talked about earlier. So
Yeah.
Lots of buildings to be built. We've got about 200 beds now. We do executive retreats, a lot of team building. We do team building at Walmart for the C-suite. We do the Toronto Blue Jays. We do GNC still, as I said. So people out there listening, if you got businesses, franchise groups, whatever, tons of ways to get involved with UHP and support. All the money that we make from those experiences go right into the program. So our staff, I should probably talk just a little bit about that. Our staff, we have a world-class team from across special operations, professional sports, the VA, DOD, and these are coaches that fit in one of those areas: think, train, feel, or lead. Any school, most schools teach in silos: intellectual and practical labs. Most schools don't do anything in the emotional space and the value space. We integrate these things all together. So the coaches really work together every day for an hour. They pull down the student load, which is 32 students usually, on a touch screen. They open up that student. They talk about what's going well. They talk about where the challenges are. They talk about where to support. And those student records live on forever. So every time they come back, we update their blueprint, and we can see the journey that they've made throughout their time coming to UHP.
It's amazing. Just got me thinking, if you ever want to get into security, I think I know the guys that own the largest security company in the country. So
that is a space that a lot of our coaches and a lot of our students are special operations. They're going through that transition. They make very good entrepreneurs. Obviously, they make great contractors. So we should definitely riff on that.
Yep, sounds good. All right, I know we're running out of time, and we could go on forever about this. I think what you're doing is amazing. I wanted to talk a little bit about the entrepreneurial side of it. I mean, the risk that you took in buying it, how you put up millions of your own money to build it, but that might have to be for podcast number 2. I want to transition to what the second part of our podcast is all about. It's the Sidekick Life. So first, it's who we serve, right? But we are also big believers in once you've served enough people, it makes major impacts to your own life where you can then live life on your terms. So just tell me, what does that mean for you? Like, how are you living your life now because of all the people that you've served?
Great question. I think I alluded to it as I've been building this. I've found myself spending a lot more time in the spiritual space and trying to figure out, really, I found my purpose for sure. I found a canvas that I can I can live through forever. There's literally no end in what could be created in this place. And so I'm very fulfilled and fortunate that I'm in that space. Having kids, I mean, I think it's a very, when you have children, for those listeners that are out there that have kids, you'll understand this. That's really what matters in my life, and helping my kids grow into amazing human beings and modeling for them what I think that is. One small example of that would be the work we do in values and helping people discover what their values are, and then building a plan to live those values. Every day on the way to school, I talk to my kids about their values. They know their values top to bottom. They're 5 and 7. They've known them since they were like 3 and 5. They're now using them in examples. They have to remember they pick a value, I have 7 values. So pick gratitude, for example, one of our family values. They'll go to school. They have to come back and tell us how gratitude showed up in their life. So if I hadn't been doing this work, that would have never happened for me to have that clear of an understanding of how important values are. I get letters and emails every day, text messages, Facebook messages, whoever uses that still, from students from 3-4 years ago that says, "Hey, I know we haven't been connected, but you've changed my life. I'm in such an amazing place because of your program, and I just wanted you to know that." And so I get to sit in gratitude all day long, all the time. I go out to campus, and my students that are there, I struggle with this a bit. I know what role I think God is wanting me to play with this thing. But to them, I'm a superstar in some ways. And I don't like that feeling very much. I think it's part of the reason I've started to really think about my own spirituality, and that if I can just give all that to God and say, "This is all yours," not me, but I'm playing that role for you. That's become at least a way for me to accept that I have to play that role, not because I want to play it. So, I'm learning so much through this about people. And back to the point that we made in the very beginning, I think life is about growing consciousness, and I grow and learn so much every day because I get to see so many people going through such significant changes and growth, and I'm in still early 40s and have a huge amount of life left, and I'm very excited about taking the aggregation of those things over the years and making bigger and bigger impacts. So I couldn't be more grateful for the life that I have, and it's a two-way street for sure. Everything I give to it, it gives back and more. So it's awesome.
It's amazing, Matt. Like the core values, that's something in our family right now that's really important too. We just got done with like planning for this year, and my kids, they have core values too, right? I've never seen them get in fights. And the youngest one, he's 6. He actually says it now. He's like, "Hey Brooks, you're not living out your core values." That's like his main argument as they're fighting. I'm like, I succeeded as a dad, baby. That was the first time it's ever happened. But anyway, one last question, and it's gotta be a short one because of the actual question. If you had to define your legacy in one sentence, Matt, what would it be?
My life is a perpetual, indefinite sentence I couldn't write because I'll always be growing and changing. And
It's amazing.
my legacy is not mine. It's the collection of all of, I really believe that what we're building here is for everybody, and I want everybody to feel ownership of it. And so, I don't honestly think about legacy a whole lot. I think if you live an amazing life that fulfills you, if at the end there's a legacy for your kids to be proud of, that's enough for me. I don't need to be famous. I don't.
Great. Well, even if I didn't know you coming into this, leaving this call, I would have no doubt you're going to leave a great legacy, because every time I started talking about you wanted to continually bring it back to the vets and the purpose of UHP. So that's really cool. I appreciate it. Matt, I wish we had more time, but we don't. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for what you're doing for vets, for what you're building. And obviously for anybody listening, if you want to learn more about UHP, they've got a wonderful website. If you're a vet, I'd encourage you to check it out. If you're a sponsor, I'd encourage you to check it out, because Matt's doing big things, and keep an eye out for what he's doing. Thanks for being with us.
I appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
You got it. Thanks for joining us on the Sidekick Life, where we highlight true sidekicks, entrepreneurs who've got their customers' backs, solve real world problems, and after helping enough people, get to live the life they've always dreamed of. We'll see you next time.